This month I was supposed to talk about all the E3 showcases again, but I still haven't watched them. But I did take my Steam Deck on a trip and I upgraded my internet, so let's talk about that instead. Yep, so at the end of last month and start of this month, I went on a trip and it was to a wedding and it was fine. There's not really much to say about that, but that meant that I had the opportunity to take my Steam Deck out. So I'd already been using it at home a little bit before this trip and I decided I liked it, but I hadn't used it extensively, it had never been the only thing I used. So then this trip was 4 days, I think, 3 or 4 days, something like that. So for those few days, it was the only thing I had with me. Now, usually when I go on a trip, I take my laptop and a keyboard and a mouse, so I can play Final Fantasy okay. I take a controller for playing Elite. I take multiple chargers, one for my laptop, one for my phone. I take a mouse mat. I take a HDMI cable, and it's just a lot of stuff that I take. And then this time, I took one charger, and I took my Steam Deck, and a USB-C hub for a breakout thing, for extra ports, and a 3D printed Steam Deck dock, because just after getting my Steam Deck, I finally set up my 3D printer again, because I'd upgraded it, and it needed some changes making to it after the upgrade. I'd made the upgrade, but the upgrade required more maintenance doing, and I got through the upgrade part and never to the rest of it. So I finally got around to doing that. And I then used it to print myself a dock for my Steam Deck. And it's pretty good. It's not perfect. It's a little bit big. What I mean is the dock itself is actually quite small, but the gap in which the Steam Deck fits is really big. So what I've done is I had bits of foam, and I've stuck those on the inside of the grippy bit to provide a bit more grip, and also to protect the Steam Deck itself from the hard plastic a bit more. And that's been great. So I used that a lot while I was away as well. With that, what I'd do is I'd plug the dock into my Steam Deck and have that sat down, and then we'd watch videos on the TV and stuff. So that was good. But whenever I was playing something, I'd have it in my hands and play it like that. I've only used it for a few games so far, but it's been great for everything I've tried. Playing Elite was painless. I already play it on a controller anyway, so there was nothing new to learn. The launcher worked fine, I didn't have any issues with it. It says that it doesn't work, but it does, so I had no trouble whatsoever. I played Stardew, and that works fine. There is no issues. The only issues with it is that, for one, when I'm on a controller, I play the game a lot slower. Don't really understand why, but everything takes a lot longer on a controller than it does when I'm on my mouse and keyboard. Also, on the PC version, I've got some mods, and you can install the mods on the Steam Deck. I just haven't. So not having those mods was a bit annoying, but it's hardly the end of the world. And then the only other thing I played was Final Fantasy. 14, obviously. Which was actually kind of one of the reasons why I bought it. I liked the idea of being able to play Final Fantasy not on my computer, honestly. And it's been really good for that. It was the steepest learning curve of all of it, in every respect. So, it doesn't just work. I think it might do now. But also, I don't play the Steam version, on my computer normally. So, that required some messing about anyway. So I have to download and install the free trial on Steam. And then mess with some files in Linux. And then go back into the thing on Steam and then log in with my normal account. And then it just downloads the game and then it works normally. I don't really get why you've got to do that, but apparently you do. So messing with that stuff is it was fine. It wasn't complicated. It's just not something I would like to do normally. That process actually wasn't that hard. And once it was installed and everything, it runs fine. The next thing was learning to play the game on a controller, because, I say, I play with mouse and keyboard normally, and I'm way more comfortable with that. So what I did initially was I plugged a controller into my computer and, messed about a bit, so I could get a feel for it, but I didn't really do anything. And then once I got on my Steam Deck, I actually, set up the profiles properly and everything, and, I mean, it's fine. I know people really like playing on controller, and I just don't. I very much prefer having my keyboard, but... I don't know how to describe it. I very much prefer having my mouse and keyboard, but the experience is not so bad that I'm going to take a mouse and keyboard with me places. It's been great, pretty much. I have a wireless mouse and keyboard combination thing that I might take with me, but I wouldn't use it for this. I mentioned before that I use the dock to watch like videos on the TV. Like having the wireless keyboard and mouse thing would be nice for that, because it means like I can like change videos without having to get up and go over to it, because at the moment that's what I have to do. Actually, it would also come in handy with Final Fantasy, because it is a little awkward logging in to Final Fantasy on the Steam Deck because of the way the keyboard works. Now, when the launcher comes up, you have to log in, obviously. To get the keyboard up, you have to like press the Steam button and tap the X. And right now it just doesn't work perfectly. Sometimes you'll press it and it'll work. Other times you'll press it and nothing will happen. And then you'll press it again and still nothing will happen. And then you press it a third time and then it'll work. It appears to be, you press it and it doesn't work, but it still ticks up like as if it's appeared. The variable gets set to it being visible even though it's not visible. So the next time you press it, it resets the variable, and then you press it a third time and then it actually comes up the third time. It's annoying. It's not something that's like causing me any issues. It's just, vaguely annoying, and I'm sure it'll get fixed. But yeah, so having like an actual keyboard would work for that. Great. So I might use it for that, but I wouldn't play the game with it like that. So yeah, learning to play Final Fantasy on a controller was probably the worst part of this entire experience. Not that it's like bad, it's just very much not what I was used to. And I have wasted so many potions just because I've pressed the wrong button combinations and stuff. But once I was used to it, it's fine. I could probably set it up to be like more efficient and stuff, but I don't plan on it ever being like my main way of playing the game. While I was away, it was great for, actually playing the game with. Now that I'm home, I'll play it at night sometimes and just do some crafting, and it's good for that. Not having to worry about other people makes me less critical of the control system. Like not having to worry about fucking up in a dungeon. I'm just crafting a thing, because I do the crafting quite slowly anyway, because I panic a lot just in case I press the wrong button. So yeah, like that's fine. I've been doing a lot of crafting recently. I'm trying to get my crafting levels up. I've got my culinarian to 63 now, which is the highest of all of my crafters, and my gatherers. But yeah, it's been good. The Steam Deck itself is great. The only issue I've got, it's like a big issue, but it does get quite warm when playing Final Fantasy. It doesn't seem to really be an issue with Stardew, and I don't remember it happening much with Elite. It probably did, but I played that for like obviously much shorter sessions, just because of the way I play Elite. But with Final Fantasy, it does get quite warm while playing. It's a little bit annoying. It's a bit warm. It gets a bit much on your hands sometimes. But yeah, it's been great. Like, I've really enjoyed using it, and I would like to use it more. I've downloaded Dragon's Dogma on it, which also is a game that says it doesn't work, but I've looked it up and other people have said that it works fine. I want to play Dragon's Dogma on it, but there's just so much coming out at the moment that I can't dedicate the time to it. At the time of recording and at the time of release, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is like just about to / has just come out. So like obviously all my time's going to go into that, and I'm also playing Live Alive at the moment, and I finished Neon White and Stray, and I've put in all these time into these other games, so I just don't have the time to set aside to a completely different action RPG. Once I get some free time, or once I free up some time, rather, I'll put some more time into that, because I would like to. The only other, not criticism, the only other thing I will say is, while I do think it's worth the money, it is possibly not worth the money I spent on it because of my own choices. So I've spent the extra money on the most expensive version. One of the main reasons I did that is because I wanted the anti-glare screen, and then after getting that, I was like, I really want someone to protect the screen, so I bought a screen protector and I installed it, and it's not a matte screen protector, which means it's now just really shiny. So I've spent a lot of extra money on a thing that is completely irrelevant to me. That was just a really bad choice on my part. Besides that though, I think it's great. I'd thoroughly enjoy using it. I do think, just to touch on it a little bit, the thing about Valve downgrading the SSD performance, it's kind of bullshit. They downgraded the SSD performance, then changed the store page, but people who'd already bought it by that point can still get the one with the downgraded performance, and I think that's wrong. I don't necessarily have a complaint about them changing the system. My complaint is that I bought it based on one set of specifications, and they have delivered a thing under a different set. I don't think that's fair. I think if I'd bought it now and it has like the new specifications, then yes, I know what I'm getting. But at the time, I bought it under one, and now I don't know if I have, but I might have gotten the other one. And it's not even a matter of like, I think it's going to be a massive performance hit or whatever, because apparently it's not. I don't really get how it's not. It's literally less lanes. That is less performance. They said it's not. I don't fully believe them. But more so, like I say, it's a matter of like, you sold a thing saying it's going to do this, and then some of these versions literally just don't do that. Like, I think that's wrong. Everyone who bought it before that point should get what they were told they were getting. And everyone who bought it past that point can get either, because that's what they're offering now. It's purely the overlap between the two that gets me. Like, that bothers me. Other than that, though, yeah, it's great. It's worth the money. I think even the cheapest option, it's just a really good thing. It's just really good, and it feels good, and it's good to use. It's a little bit heavy for me, but I've said that about fucking everything, don't I? So just after we came back from this trip, we got new Fibre Internet fitted. It was actually supposed to get fitted at the end of last month, before we went, but they rearranged it to just after we came back instead. So obviously I couldn't stream that day, and because a lot of the work was done in my workroom, I couldn't do anything really. So I ended up just helping the guy install it. I had some time. I had a lot of time and nothing to do, so I figured I'd just help him because it'd get everything done quicker. When we were originally sold it, the guy who sold it to us basically didn't have a clue what he was talking about. I was asking him, what sort of wires they use, because I was like, well, they can't do fibre connections into the house because that would just be really expensive. But I asked the guy and he was like, oh yeah, that's what they do. And I was like, they can't do that. That's tons of fucking money. Terminating fibre outside is expensive. I don't fully understand why, because that's not what I do. I just know enough to know that it is. We were having multiple boxes fitted and they all use the same cables because it does TV and internet. Between TV and the internet, we've got 4 different boxes, so that would be 4 different cables. And I was like, they're not going to spend that much money on terminating that many cables. That's ridiculous. But the guy who sold it to us had no idea what he was talking about. And I was like, well, I was explaining to someone else, this is the information that a normal person wouldn't think about, so they can skate on not needing to know. But this is exactly the sort of thing I want to know. If you're coming to sell me something, I want to know every single thing about it. The way that they do it is they drill a hole through your wall outside the house, and then run the cable into the house and run it along your skirting boards or whatever. Now, one of the rooms that we wanted the TV in, you can't do that in because there's shelving units and stuff built into the walls on every wall. I designed the room to utilize the most space, and it does. But that means that there's stuff on every wall. So I was like, well, we can't do that. But I'm trying to get information from the guy before we even sign up to it to know what's going to happen, and the guy hasn't got a clue. They're running one fibre connection to the outside of the house to a box that then does the conversion between that and I think it's, they're just normal Cat 6E cables, I think. It's just a series of them. We've got 2 different types. It's weird, there's a box on the outside of the house, and then you've got the fibre cable that runs to that box, and then from that box, you've got a black cable, which is just Cat 6E, but weather shielded, that runs to another hole that you drill through the wall, and then inside that wall is another box, and it's a very big box for what it is, to be honest. But it literally just converts from the Cat 6E that's weather shielded to the Cat 6E that isn't weather shielded for inside the house. It's a lot of work for not very much benefit, really, but I think it just cuts down on cost for them. Don't really fully understand why they do it like that, but that's what they do. I guess it means that we can make longer cables for inside the house if we need to without having to redo the stuff on the outside of the house. So I guess it's beneficial in that way. But anyway, there was a bit of confusion, because first thing in the morning, the guy comes to fit the box on the outside of the house, and I was talking to him, and he was saying that the guy who was coming to fit the actual internet, he'd be here in a couple of days, and I'm like, what are you talking about? He's supposed to be here this afternoon, and he's like, oh no, he won't be. And I was like, what? So we left, and then we heard nothing for 4 more hours, and then the guy just turned up at the door, and he's like, yeah. And I was like, okay, we were told you weren't coming. He's like, why? And I was like, I explained all this to him. But yeah, so then I ended up spending the rest of the day with this new guy installing the stuff throughout the house, which was interesting. It was complicated because I had to talk to him about all the specifications I've got for where cables can run. But besides that, it was a good experience. He walked into my room and looked at it and he was like, oh, you're a streamer? And I was like, yeah, kind of. And he's like, oh, I stream. And so we spent most of the time talking about, like, streaming, and he was admiring all my statues. I've posted pictures of them before in places, so you might have seen. But one of them was Marcus Phoenix from Gears of War. I got the Gears of War 3 special edition, so he was looking at that and he was like, oh, it's one of my favourite games. And I was like, oh, I hate it. Yeah, so we like talked about all the different statues and like loads of different games and like streaming and making videos and all sorts of shit. It was good. Like I say, like he would do stuff like run cables to points, and then I would do the rest of the run while he like did more work on the outside. It just got through all the work way faster, which was great. The only issue I've got, and that we weren't told before we bought it, we got the phone line done at the same time, but it doesn't do the actual phone line. It uses like voice over IP, basically. The issue with that is we didn't know, and that means that the internet is now in my room, and the phone is not, because I don't want a phone in my room, because I don't want you to phone me ever. So now, like, people are insisting that I get a phone in my room, and it's like, well, I don't want the noise, and I'm never going to answer it. Well, I just want to run a really long phone line out of my room to, like, the hall or something, so people can use the phone there, but it's not even everyone, it's just one person refuses to let me do that. We'll sort something out, I suppose. Well, for now, we just don't have any phones. But eventually we'll have to sort something out about that. Everything's been great with the internet so far. Like, my download speeds are way higher, obviously. My upload speeds have been way higher, which means I've been, like, uploading videos in, like, less than half the time, which has been, like, really convenient for me. The only issue I've had is that for 2 of my streams, I can't say my internet broke. I don't really know what happened. They've both failed in exactly the same way, where I'll look over and my stream will suddenly start dropping frames. My old stream used to drop frames a lot. Since we got the new internet, it basically never does. So I'll notice that frames have started to drop, and then the stream will die completely, and then I'll disconnect from Final Fantasy. Now, this sounds like my internet is breaking, doesn't it? But it doesn't. Because every other device I've got will continue working, and not only that, my computer that I'm streaming and playing Final Fantasy on will keep doing stuff. What I mean is, like, I can load Chrome and watch videos and stuff, but the stream and Final Fantasy won't work. What I can do is I can stop one and the other will restart. Like, the stream will restart if I turn Final Fantasy off, or Final Fantasy will restart if I turn the stream off, but if I have both on at the same time, it'll break. And it only does it every now and again. It's only happened twice. And I don't understand. It's some combination of the two makes it break. I have no idea why. And hopefully it won't happen again, but I don't know why it happened at all. The weirder thing still is, both times it's happened, about the same length into the stream each time it's happened as well. I'm very confused what's happening. Hopefully it won't happen again, but I don't know. If it does happen again, maybe I'll get more idea why it's happening. But, obviously I'd rather it never happen at all. So one thing I did is finish Neon White. I already spoke about it a lot last month, so I don't have tons to say on it, but it is quite possibly my favourite game of this year. I've just, had the fewest complaints about it. There are other games that came out this year that I was more interested in, and that I ended up having more complaints about while playing. Like, Horizon was really good, but, I don't know, just not as good. Basically, just not as good. Elden Ring really started to drag towards the end. I enjoyed it, but towards the end I just kind of wanted it to end. What else even came out this year? Live Alive is out now. I'm really enjoying that. But Neon White, so far, is my favourite game of this year. The gameplay and aesthetic are, exactly what I like, even though I didn't actually realise that beforehand. Beforehand, I thought, going into it, that the gameplay I might not enjoy, and then basically as soon as I touched it, I was like, yeah, this is great. I know some people didn't like the story, but I thought it was... No, I thought it was great. I really liked it. It was, kind of anime, and, some bullshit, and it was great. I really liked all of it. I can't think of anything that I actively dislike about this game. There is, some of the presents are a bit hard to get, and I don't like how long the boss fights are, but outside of that, there's nothing. I just think it's great. It's, well worth any money. It's well worth getting, and it's just great. It's, my favourite game of this year. On the other hand, we've got Stray, which, it's alright. I kind of wish I'd waited for a sale. I don't know. I just didn't enjoy it that much. I thought it was fine. I didn't think it was, like, terrible. This is, like, the exact opposite of how I feel about Neon White. Neon White, I'm like, this is amazing, I have no complaints. And Stray is like, it's fine, and I have a lot of complaints. It's got really weird pacing. There are 12 chapters, 11 of which I finished in 3 hours, and 1 chapter took me 50 minutes. The entire game overall I beat in less than 4 hours. In total, it was 3 hours, 42 minutes and 26 seconds to beat the entire game. There is definitely stuff I missed. Like, I know there are memories that I didn't pick up, so I could go back and find those, but, you know, like, I don't always get all the collectibles in a game. Like, not everyone does. There's an achievement I know that requires you to sleep for an hour, and if I did that, that would literally just increase my gameplay by 25%. And I don't want to do that. Like, it's such a short game. Like, especially in how much I spent on it. And especially in comparison with Neon White. Neon White was less money, and I got like 17 hours of gameplay out of it, and I enjoyed every second of it. Whereas Stray was, like I say, more expensive, a quarter of the time? Less than. And I just thought it was, like, okay. That being said about how short it is, I don't really know where else they could have gone with the story. It kind of ended at the point where I don't see where else it could have gone. And I think anywhere else within the story where they'd, like, added more stuff would have just felt like padding. I will say they don't really wrap up the story. I'm not going to spoil what happens, obviously, but I don't really feel like everything got resolved. You solved a problem, but not your problem, if you get what I mean. I also just don't think it looks great. Like, the close-ups on all the cats don't look very good. And considering that's like half of what the game's like built off, it's a bit strange. The environments are great, the robots are great, everything else in the game looks great. But the cat itself, I don't think looks very good. There's quite a few scenes, like cutscenes and stuff, where you get a close-up on the cat's face, and every single time I'm like, can you not just like pan out a little bit? I just don't think it looks good. The artwork for the cat looks way better than the cat does in the game. Maybe this is some form of problem with my computer, but I don't think so. I've got a 3080, and I've got a 5950X. I don't feel like I should have much issues rendering one cat's face. When everything else in the game looked like practically flawless, that cat's face is just kind of bad. Playing as the cat was like kind of fun. Being a cat is nice. I like that you can like sleep. Doing cat things is cute. Part of me feels like I'd enjoy it more if you were a robot cat, but if you were a robot cat, then that would kind of make the entire game redundant. A lot of stuff in the game wouldn't happen or need to happen if you were a robot cat. That would just be an entirely different game, but the robot cat stuff would probably get rid of all of my complaints about how the cat looks. There's also just like loads of little things about it I don't like. I feel bad because I don't want to spoil stuff, but like, they add combat, and it's really bad, and then they just remove it not long afterwards anyway. It just felt really redundant, and it wasn't enjoyable the entire time it was there. Also, like, the jumps are contextual, and most of the time that's okay, but there are a couple of times where I died because it jumped when I didn't want it to. Because, like, I was holding the button a little bit too long, or I was too close to an edge when I didn't want to be, and it just jumped straight away. And the reason I bring that up is because there are times when, like, I'll be actively trying to jump up a ledge, and nothing will happen, because I'm, like, in the wrong place. But then there are other times when I don't want to jump, and it'll throw me off an edge. It's more bothersome because, like, if you hold the X button, you can, like, chain jumps. So you'll go from, like, 1 to 2 to 3, you know, like that. The issue is that sometimes I feel like the hold is very quick. So you'll go, like, I'll go 1 to 2 and then want to stop. But in the time it takes me to land, it's registered that I'm going again. And I'm like, I don't want to. Having more control would have been nice, but I also don't think it would have worked as well. Like, I don't know. I don't get why people like the game as much as they do, honestly. Like, I don't think it's, like, terrible, but it's definitely not amazing. So, I got really ill at one point this month, just after coming back from that wedding. The weird thing is, a lot of the guests from that wedding ended up getting COVID. And I was the only person there with a mask. And I also got ill, but it wasn't COVID. I'm the only person I know who didn't get it. I know it wasn't COVID because I tested and it came back negative every time. But, like, multiple other people, even in my household, got COVID, and I just didn't. This is not the first time this has happened. I've just been lucky so far. Well, I mean, like, I've been lucky, but also, like, I've done all of the precautions you're supposed to, which everyone else just seems to ignore now. Well, anyway, because of that, it means I had to cancel a few streams. I also got that migraine once, which cut another stream short. Besides that, the new stream type stuff that I've been doing, I think it's been going great. It's accidentally ended up with me recording 2 more LPs, which is pretty nice. It's made my job a bit easier. One of those was Neon White, which is just finished, and as I've said, is like one of my favourite games. Another of which is going to start on Tuesday. You might be able to guess what that is. It's also very short, that one, so it'll only be a couple of weeks, and then I'll need something else to fill its slot, which keeps happening. I know I said it last time, but I'm getting through LPs a lot quicker this year, which is kind of an issue, because it means I'm like constantly having to plan new stuff. You know, it's not really an issue, but I used to be more thoroughly planned than this, and things have been going so much faster that I've not been able to plan as well. Other than that, the Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. I like the game, but I think that name just doesn't flow well. Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak has started, and I really like it, but I've had to switch up how I record it, just because I now know about the MR cap. So, when it happened in the base game, there was a thing where your HR gets unlocked, and it didn't give me all of my experience points, basically, for everything I'd done beforehand. So, I know that's going to happen this time. So, what I've done instead is, I used to do all of the stuff in the game before progressing the story, and now I'm doing the exact opposite of that. I'm like basically just mainlining the story. The only things I'm doing that aren't the story is when I get better gear, and I'll go out and grind for that gear and then come back and do the story again. That's so that as soon as I unlock the cap, I've got a ton of content that I can go back to and do one after the other, basically, to get all of it done, and like to get my MR up as quickly as possible. I'm kind of annoyed that I feel like I have to go through it this way, but it does feel like the best use of my time. And like, I'm really enjoying playing it. It's been nice doing new stuff. After playing the same game for so long, doing the same stuff every time. Doing some different stuff has been nice. Other than all that, though, everything else is just normal. It's going to carry on being normal. I think what I might do is I might try and designate one day to do a Final Fantasy stream each week. Maybe a Friday or something, because that way I've got like a consistent time when I know I can like turn in a load of quests, versus like at the moment where I'm like kind of trying to fit it in when I've got time. There's been times when I've really wanted to do one of the mixed streams, but I've had to do a Final Fantasy stream. So if I'm going to try and do a Final Fantasy stream on the same day every week, then the opposite will be true, and that'll be easier, I think, in that like when I don't have stuff to do in Final Fantasy, I can just do one of these, versus feeling pressured to do one of the Final Fantasy streams, though I want to do one of the mixed streams. Because honestly, like, the Monday just gone, I wanted to do one of the mixed streams, but I couldn't because I had no space in my inventory in Final Fantasy because I had quests to turn in. But it's not really an issue. It's just, I'll maybe try and designate a day, and then when it's that day, I'll do it if I've got stuff to do, and if I don't, I won't. It's more just like a planning thing for me more than anything. I also just like keep talking about making new stuff and then never do, mostly just because I keep like psyching myself out on it. I keep worrying that no one's going to want to, like, watch whatever it is. And I feel like that would maybe be, like, a good way to think if I had an actual audience that consistently watched things I made. But I don't. So why the fuck should I care? I get, like, 1 or 2 views on the vast majority of things I make, if that. So I'm, like, holding myself to an audience that doesn't exist. So I might as well just make whatever I want. If I can work all this out, maybe I'll actually make something. But who knows? Special thanks to all of my patrons. You can join them over at patreon.com/Holden Gatsby, and for $1 a month you'll get to see what I'm working on early and get exclusive roles on my Discord, along with other rewards I might think of. You can also just follow me there if you want to for free, as it's probably the best place to see all of my content as soon as it's available. There's links to the Patreon along with my Discord, Twitter, Twitch, and all the other podcast platforms in the description for this episode. Finally, don't forget you can email me using podencastby@gmail.com if you've got anything you want to say. Thanks for sticking around. Bye. Special thanks to my patrons, Justin Wood, Hobbs, Koopy Vegeta, Gunrunner, Water, and Bad. You can join my patrons at patreon.com/Holden Gatsby, follow me on Twitter @Holden Gatsby, and follow my Twitch at twitch.tv/Holden Gatsby. Don't forget to subscribe to both of my channels. Thanks for sticking around. Bye.